Well, good morning if you are in Hawaii or Alaska or Lima, Peru. Good afternoon if you are in New Orleans, Louisiana. I hope I pronounced that correctly, or
Absolutely.
Bloomington, Indiana, or here in New York City with me, or in Paris, France, where my guest speaks practically natively, Milan, Italy, where I speak practically natively. Um, all over Africa, all over Asia, all over Australia, New Zealand, everywhere that we have listeners to Fred Plotkin on Fridays on Adagio, the place where classical music happens. Adagio is a video and audio streaming platform dedicated to supporting artists and to making classical music and opera available to fans all around the world. My guest today is a tenor, a real live tenor, one I admire very much, whose name, when pronounced, I've heard it pronounced so many different ways.
You and
So
me
what I'm going
both.
to ask Bryan to do is to pronounce it the way it's correctly pronounced, and then some of the mispronunciations that you've heard. So
So
start
my
with how you
dad,
pronounce your name.
yeah, my dad was very specific that it's email, so no H, as the French would say, since his family is of Acadian and German. But because of where he grew up, there was more of a Acadian influence, so everybody said email. And it's been a little bit Americanized, but I've heard Hymel, I've heard Himmel, which, again, nice, heaven in German. Himmel. I actually went to high school with another Brian, and he said Hymel, and he was Hemel, and there was another guy that was Himel. So it's a very common name down in those parts. But thanks for asking, Fred. I appreciate it.
But what about your first name?
Brian, with the Y, I don't know why that was. There's kind of lore that somebody misspelled it on a birth certificate, and it was spelled brain, so they just wanted to stay as far away as that as possible. But yeah, I kind of like the two Y's, the Y in the Brian, the Y in the email. So it kind of
Well, I asked you because the first time someone mentioned you to me,
uh-huh.
and that this is a guy you need to hear, they
Okay.
said Bryan Hymel.
Yes, well,
I said, "Where's Bryan Hymel from?"
well, and I think, given the repertoire that I kind of made my
En
reputation on,
français.
I got very, very used to that brilliant, and apparently, yeah, it was when kids were coming up in school learning English in France. There was a very famous cartoon where Brian was in the kitchen. Was that is so funny because the some of the stage managers and some of the other assistant directors are like, I've known your name since I was a very, very young child, and I always got a kick out of that.
So you are from the way we say up north, New Orleans, Nolans,
Again, all of those are
um,
good. We say New Orleans, but
New Orleans.
yeah,
Um, I have listeners on this program all over the world, thankfully. So
sure.
although everyone will know of Nolans,
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans,
Right.
not everybody really knows it beyond sort of the most famous images that we have of the place.
Sure. Sure.
I will say about it that I'm a native born citizen of the United States, as you are.
Yeah.
We are both from cities that are new, in other words, New York, New Orleans, that
Right.
speak as much to the roots of our cultures, although New York was New Amsterdam before it became New York.
Sure.
Um, there was a large swath of territory in North America that was colonized and owned by France.
Right.
And France is particular because it had large parts of the northeastern part of North America, so
Mm-hmm.
Quebec,
Right.
Maine, New
Right.
Brunswick, um, places that we still think of as northeastern Canada, the northeastern United States.
Yeah.
But it then had the deep south. And if we know the story of L'Abbé Prévost by L'Abbé Prévost of
Mm.
Manon Lescaut,
Right.
um, she's in the desert of Louisiana. Now, Louisiana was named for a Louis, but the one of the kings.
Yeah.
But Louisiana, as a zone, extended north to places like Missouri and Nebraska and parts of Kansas,
Oh
all
yeah,
along the Mississippi River.
Louisiana Purchase, I think, doubled the size of the country.
It did in
Yeah,
1803.
right.
Thomas Jefferson did that. And so, therefore, we have a part of the United States, but most specifically, what is the state of Louisiana, and most specifically, the southern part of the state, which includes the city of New Orleans,
Right.
which is not the capital, by the way. The capital is Baton Rouge,
Red
Stick.
Stick.
I don't know
Yeah.
why it's called Red Stick.
I think it has to do with the Native Americans, tribes that were
Okay.
around there. Yeah.
But one thing that I always point out about Louisiana to people who don't know it is, unlike most of the American South, Louisiana has many more Catholics.
Yes, absolutely. Of which one
Much
I am
of
one
the
of
rest
those.
of the American South is Protestant or
Right.
different forms of Christianity.
Sure.
But the level of Catholicism is nowhere as high as Louisiana in the southern part of the United States.
That's absolutely
And even
true.
most of the United States, California, to some degree, Texas, New
Mhm.
York,
Yeah.
Boston, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, but as a state, as a culture, it's Catholicism in Louisiana.
Yeah, I
And
think the Italian immigrants played a huge. The
also,
Irish immigrants.
yeah,
Yeah, there's lots of. There's like the St. Mary's German church, and then there's the St.
yeah.
Mary's Italian church. So yeah.
And that's part of the thing in New Orleans, but beyond, is
Hmm.
that New Orleans, which is a port city, I've been there, I've made
Yeah.
4 visits there, and spent time there after Hurricane Katrina,
Right.
participating in cleanup.
Sure. Thank you.
And I learned a lot from the people there. My first visit was in 1985.
Good for you, Fred.
The war,
You look
the
great.
War of Misunderstanding. No, it was 1985. It
Yeah.
was September of 1985, and it was hurricane season.
Right.
And I knew a woman there who took me to meet a chef who lived slightly out of the city, whose name was Leah Chase.
Oh, of course.
And
Yeah.
Leah was part of restaurant Dookie Chase,
Yeah.
became very famous. She was famous locally by then, but not nationally.
Sure.
And Leah prepared for me what is still the best breakfast I've ever had in my life.
Not surprising. Yeah.
And the restaurant was not open yet for the public. She prepared breakfast for me that day.
Oh, so
And
nice.
beautiful sausages that she made, eggs that had just been laid,
Right.
and a sort of rice with spices
Mm.
fried patty called Callas.
Okay, I've never had this.
Call, I think like Maria Callas was
That's
the
my
spelling.
that's my guess, right?
And I think it was fried in butter as opposed to oil of some kind. And
Yeah.
it was simultaneously sweet and spicy and the perfect foil for the pork products and the egg. It was magnificent.
Oh, you're making me hungry,
And-
Fred.
And she squeezed, I remember she squeezed grapefruits for me for juice because I love grapefruit juice.
Yeah.
And she said, "You want it with pulp or without pulp, darling?" And I said, "With pulp." She said, "That's the way you're supposed to drink it."
Yeah.
She said, "I take the pulp out for people who don't understand,
Right.
but you have
totally.
to drink it with pulp." So the level of culinary sophistication in New
Yes.
Orleans
Yeah.
is something remarkable that people don't know. They have the famous dishes that we know about, the gumbos, the jambalayas, the etouffees, and so on.
Right.
But in every single thing.
Yeah.
And I remember very well that after Hurricane Katrina, I was involved in one of the parishes, which is districts, in a cleanup that had basically been ignored by the public. There were
Right.
the famous ones that the Oprah Winfrey's and Brad Pitts went to help, and that's great.
Sure.
But this one was one that was completely abandoned.
Yeah.
And yet people were pulling green things out of the ground and cooking in the middle of all this, chaos.
You got to make
They
do,
kept-
right?
Yeah, they made do. And they kept singing and making music.
Yeah.
And that's what struck me. And I do have one question for you about New
Sure.
Orleans, and then we're going to talk more about New Orleans.
Okay.
But my very first visit, I stayed in a rooming house it's spelled Chart, but it's pronounced Charter Street in New
Right.
Orleans.
Right in the quarter. Yes.
And her name, I remember the lady, was Mrs. Junius Underwood.
Okay.
And she was quite elderly
Okay.
in 1985,
Right.
but was one of the last surviving widows of a man who fought in the Civil War.
Wow.
Because Captain Underwood was quite elderly when he married her,
Mm-hmm.
and she had a black butler, servant, whatever, named Lewis, who was a
Okay.
gentleman who was very lovely.
Yeah.
And he explained to me that Mrs. Underwood expects you to join her every afternoon for conversation.
Okay.
So I stayed at a very moderate price in this rooming house. It was just
Right.
me. I was the only roomer. But I had to join her every day in conversation.
Okay.
And my little accommodation was outside the house in what was called the garçonnière.
Okay. Right.
And she explained, you know what a garçonnière is?
I've heard of it, right?
Okay, so
Garçon
you
from the
didn't have one
boy.
growing up, but
Yeah.
the
No.
garçonnière was where the young man of the house, if he intends to have a romantic relationship with a lady or perhaps a man, but a lady was the intention,
I see.
that he would retire to the garçonnière with his guest and enjoy each other there in the garçonnière, and then you were supposed to, pretend it never happened.
Indeed.
But garçon
Yeah.
being the young man.
Right.
And so I slept in the garçonnière and joined Mrs. Underwood every day for refreshment, as she put it.
I love it.
Rather high-powered refreshment.
Right,
And
exactly.
apparently, the Colonel Underwood had died of poisoned liver from a lot of drinking, and I
Yeah,
didn't.
New
I would
Orleans is
like
known
to
for
ask
that.
what was the cause of his demise, but Lewis said to me, "I want you to understand that Mrs. Underwood is only too happy to talk about her late husband, but you don't ask her what he died of." And I said, "Of course I
Okay.
wouldn't have."
Right.
And Mrs. Underwood, on the fifth day of conversation, said to me, "Well, Fred," which had about 7 syllables,
And diphthongs.
"I notice you've not asked me what caused the demise of my husband." I said, "No, ma'am, I didn't."
Okay.
And she said, "Well, if you would like to know, he died of natural causes." And Lewis from behind was going,
Oh my gosh. I mean, the characters you can come across in New Orleans make it so worth the journey, right? The food is wonderful and it's going to be amazing anyway. And the music, of course, you can hold a trumpet up and it will practically play itself. There's so much music in the air there. But the people of New Orleans, and especially the older generations, just had such character. And the way they would tell stories and the memories that they had, New Orleans is just such a cosmopolitan place compared to a lot of the rest of the South. Just with so many, being the port city, as you said, there's so many different people coming through there, and they may end up somewhere else, but a lot of them, if they didn't come through New York, they came through New Orleans.
So I want people to understand that because it is a port and it's at the base of the Mississippi River, all the agricultural and other products that were grown in Nebraska and Illinois and all the way down were transported down the river on ships, on river boats, where there was also entertainment and singing and music that came into New Orleans and then out into the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico.
Right.
And it was then transported to the world. But also, people arrived from all over the world to New Orleans.
Oh, yes.
So although it's, let's call it inland as opposed to a place like Boston or New York or Atlanta, it is an old, very, very old city.
Yeah.
It's one of the oldest cities in the United States. And therefore, is this wonderful mix of people from Africa who were enslaved originally, most of them, and brought there, from all over the Caribbean, from France, from French-speaking areas, from Italy. It had notable Italian migration for a long time.
Sure, especially Sicilian.
Especially Sicilian.
Yeah.
In fact, Tennessee Williams, who lived in New Orleans, he was not born there, but he lived there, had a Sicilian-American lover for a long time. And a lot of his characters in his plays were Sicilians or Italians because of his exposure to Italian-American culture in New Orleans. There's a sandwich called a muffaletta.
Indeed.
Which everybody debates about. Oh, don't get me started.
From Italian Grocery in Central Grocery.
I'm on a roll, but that sounds like a pun. But a muffaletta is a sandwich which has different charcuterie,
Yeah.
Italian salumi, it's called,
Yeah.
with an olive blend,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. Olive salad,
And
we call it. Yeah.
therefore, the blending of all the food cultures,
Mm.
notably Africa to a great degree, but not only,
Sure.
means that and Africa and France primarily,
Yes,
and all
indeed.
these others, means that it is a remarkable cuisine, remarkably unhealthy, but remarkable for
Delicious.
its extraordinary flavors.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And when people go there, they're just not quite ready for it. But
That's true. It's really, I often tell people it's a great 3-day weekend from New York because JetBlue can get you there nonstop, and you can come in on Friday and you can have a good number of meals, of which you should not just go to Starbucks and catch a breakfast. Go to Palace Cafe or one of these wonderful places. They're all open for breakfast, and you'll get something probably not what Leah Chase got you, but close and pretty good. And then you've got lunch and you've got dinner and you have happy hour, and you can walk up and down the streets of the French Quarter. I mean, Bourbon Street obviously is the most famous one, but Royal is where all the art galleries are, and Chartres is where the cathedral is, and beautiful hotels. Quai Paul, that's Paul Prudhomme's, I think, first restaurant. It's just it's a wonderful, wonderful, amazing place.
and it's also New Orleans.
Yeah.
It is. I will never have the definitive answer on this, so I'll put it out the way it is.
Okay.
We know that the first opera performed in North America was either performed in Charleston, South Carolina, or New Orleans, Louisiana.
The New
When
Orleans,
neither was yet a state.
the New Orleans would absolutely say we did it first.
Okay. And I had Mina Hatt on recently, and he's the head of the Spoleto Festival in Charleston. And
Sure.
he said, well, the point is, what we also do know is that the second opera performed in North America was New York. So therefore, the third was either New Orleans or Charleston.
Oh, there you go.
But the
Right,
point
exactly.
is, we're talking about the 1760s.
Indeed.
So
Indeed.
this is before the United States became the United States. Louisiana didn't join until 1803 or so.
Right.
And therefore, maybe a little later. So therefore, opera is in North America before this nation was founded.
Yeah.
In certain key places, these were ports: New York, New Orleans, and Charleston. And they're port cities who were more cosmopolitan. They welcomed theater. They welcomed entertainment. They were multilingual. It's thought that the first opera done in New Orleans was in French.
Yes.
Whereas the one in Charleston was in English and the one in New York was Italian. All of that makes sense.
Sure.
But the tradition of entertainment, of singing, of performing, goes way, way back in these cities.
Yeah.
And therefore, you grew up in a very particular place in which every New Orleanian, if that's the word that we use,
indeed it is,
who I've ever met, is deeply steeped in music of all kinds.
Yeah.
Not
I agree with that 100%.
Just jazz. Jazz is magnificent. You could argue it was founded in New Orleans with Louis Armstrong.
Right.
Hard to say who founded jazz, but he was one of the first great masters.
Indeed.
The Marsalis family.
Of course.
John Baptiste. There's so many that the Nevilles. I don't want to leave anybody out.
Sure. No, I mean, there are so
Harry
many.
Connick Jr. There are all these strains of popular musicians.
Terrence Blanchard, who is
Terrence Blanchard, yes, of course.
because he's all over the opera world right now with the premieres at the Met, and I was a fan of Terrence Blanchard's before I even knew he was had any interest in writing an opera whatsoever. His trumpet recordings and duet recordings are amazing. His wonderful sound and just really soulful improvisational talent. It's amazing.
So Mahalia Jackson, one of the greatest of gospel singers, New Orleans. Shirley Barrett, one of my very favorite opera singers, New Orleans.
Yeah.
Norman Treigle, the great bass, New Orleans.
Right.
Paul Groves, there are many, 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 many.
Charles Anthony, who holds the
Charles Anthony, of course, whose real name was Charles Anthony Caruso.
Caruso, I know.
When he got to the Met in 1954, Rudolph Bing said, Nope. We had a Caruso. It was just be Charles Anthony.
He
And
actually,
he sang more
yeah,
performances at the Met than anyone else.
incredible. He actually spoke at my college graduation just by chance. And it was an honor to meet him, and he just was very gracious because I sang the national anthem, and he was like, "Hey, you got a voice on you," and I was like, "Well, I'm a voice major, thank you, sir."
So when you grow up, because New Orleans is a smaller city than New York City, and
Indeed.
therefore the concentration of music must be more deeply felt than it is here.
Yeah, yeah,
It seems whenever I've been to New Orleans or known people from New Orleans, even if music is not their profession, they have music in them.
sure.
And you can experience that a bit in Naples and Milan and
Yes.
Vienna to some degree, a few places, perhaps parts of Spain,
Mm-hmm.
Buenos Aires to some degree, though Buenos Aires is a very big city. But
Right.
New Orleans, everyone, whatever their background, whatever they do, whatever their level of education, they all
Yes.
have music in them. So talk about growing up in that, and were you aware that in the outside world, beyond the confines of New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
it was not like that?
No, I was not aware that everyone did not have that wonderful art form available to them. I think one thing that sets New Orleans apart, maybe even from New York and these other places, and it reminds me of, say, Venice, you hear music on the street, just walking down the street. Bands are playing on the corner, like the gondoliers are singing in the canals. And so it's just, you don't even realize that that's not how things are everywhere else. And some of my earliest, really early memories are of standing with my family at a Mardi Gras parade and the marching bands passing, and just feeling the impact of the drums and the horns and the trumpet players and the saxophonists. They would all, as they would march past you, you would get, the different colors of this. And it just became very visceral for me. I was very lucky to have a wonderful music teacher at my school for grammar school. So I went 1 through 8th at St. Anne Catholic School in New Orleans. And he studied voice at Eastman. He was friends with Kirk Redmond, who was in the Met Young Artist program, and David Bernard. Yeah. And so Kirk Redmond came one summer to sing for our music camp, essentially. And he sang Mamma quel vino è generoso from Cavalleria. And I didn't know, I was only 9 at the most. I was 9 years old, and I had no idea what he was singing, but I could just tell it was so passionate, and he was getting really, like, worked up, and whatever it was very passionate, I guess is the best word. And that was a transformative. My voice had not changed yet, so I mean, I certainly had no way of trying to make those kinds of sounds. But that was the first time I had encountered an opera singer, probably at all. But the point being one that was maybe 15 feet away from me, because we're so accustomed these days, for the most part, seeing opera singers in the theater at a distance and with the orchestra. But when you get a singer up close like that, it can be overwhelming. I mean, it's so visceral, and it can bring, goosebumps and tears to your eyes, and all these things, and it's just like you just don't even know what you're encountering because it's something that you've never been exposed to. Mm-hmm. So then, you brought up the Marsalis family. I was able to go in high school to the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, which is a high school that is a public school, so therefore it's free. I think now it's actually free for anybody in the state of Louisiana. It used to be only for people in Orleans Parish, but now people come from all over, and when I was there, it was creative arts, so we had music, so jazz and classical, we had dance, we had sculpting and painting, there was acting, but it's grown to include things like culinary arts and musical theater, as well as the classical and jazz program. It's massive, and it's a beautiful campus. And actually, Norman Tragle's daughter Phyllis is the one who runs that program, and she does a wonderful job with that. And actually, a lot of her students go on to study at Loyola, where I did my undergrad. And that's where I got, really the bug for the technical aspect of singing, which is what hooked me into thinking that opera could be a possibility. I really wanted to be a Broadway conductor because I loved the jazzy aspect. I loved the theater. I could play piano for rehearsals. I could conduct. But when I auditioned for Loyola and for college in general, they were like, "Well, your natural gift for singing is something that has been untapped and it's really raw. So you deserve the opportunity to see what it really can do if you understand the technique of singing." And after a year of that, I was hooked. Broadway. I still love Broadway. Took our children to Broadway shows just a couple months ago. But my real love of it was in my blood. I mean, my mother's family is from Sicily, Contessa Entellina, which is outside of Palermo, I believe. And my father's family, as I said, is German and French. So I have all those heritages in my blood that even I just didn't even know was there. And when I discovered that talent, and then it grew into a passion and a love for it, I kind of found my place.
Now, I don't think it's a secret to say that New Orleans famously is also a very poor city.
Yes, that is
and
true.
I've always admired, but wondered about the fact that so many people struggle to just get by in New Orleans, and that there's not a population of wealthy people around. There are some, but compared to other American cities, there are fewer.
Sure, and so definitely the truth.
Public services and just healthcare results and so on are not great.
It's unfortunate. I mean, but it's almost laughable at this point that the city is changing every 6 months the company who is going to do the trash collecting in the French Quarter, because nobody seems to be able to keep up with the demand, especially when, right now is Jazz Fest. So there's a lot of people in town. Mardi Gras, obviously, a lot of people in town. For New Year's and the Super Bowl this year, there were a lot of people in town, even despite the tragedy that happened, on New Year's Eve. But yeah, I mean, it definitely has. It's probably the only. I mean, we've had Democratic mayors in New Orleans for as long as I can remember, but we are the only city that would have a Democratic office elected official that's running things. And yeah, the kind of gap between the poorer people and the people who are the doctors and the lawyers and the business. I mean, a lot of companies left New Orleans to either go to Houston, Dallas, or Atlanta. That kind of earlier in the 70s and the 80s, we had, we still have these skyscrapers that are, a lot of them are empty now. There's not the business to sustain them anymore. So tourism is our biggest industry as far as, kind of helping to get cash into the infrastructure of the city so that we can take care of the people that need it.
And in that way, too, it's like Venice, because Venice survives on tourism,
right?
Whereas the mainland Veneto, cities such as Treviso, Verona, Padova, Vicenza, are very wealthy.
Yeah.
But the city of Venice, which is primarily submerged underwater half the time,
right,
and is gorgeous and singular in the world, with its music, with its great cuisine and so on, has become sort of a party place for outsiders. But the population of Venice, and I was a Venetian history major, so I know this stuff.
Love that.
Used to be 160,000. Now it's below 50,000.
Oh, I had no idea.
It was 160,000 in the 70s, so 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are elderly, and a lot of the houses have been abandoned, especially the lower floors, because of repeated flooding.
Yes.
And therefore, people live on the upper floors, and certain people from elsewhere with a lot of money acquire a better building and live in the upper part.
Yes.
And it's gorgeous, and the city of Venice tries to limit tourism because otherwise it'll be ruined by the footfalls of millions of people.
And ships, right? There's a big issue with the cruise ships.
And cruise ships coming in, as there is in New Orleans. Yeah. And just the displacement of water that happens when a big ship comes in.
Sure.
But also oil refineries. Italy finally got rid of some of the worst oil refining that happened just in the same lagoon as Venice.
Oh, wow.
On the opposite side. Mussolini had put that in because they found that the chemicals were going into the water, into the canals,
Mm.
and not only killing people, but destroying the foundations of the city. So
Right.
Venice was sinking because of the destruction of the foundations.
Yeah, because
Now
it's
they
all
were
built on
able,
pilings, right? It's all on pilings.
right, but they were
Yeah.
able to fix that. It's no longer sinking. The difference
Good.
is the water is rising
Mm.
because of
Right.
climate change, because of
Sure.
other things, and now
Yeah.
displacement of water from massive cruise ships that come down not the Grand Canal, but the canal that feeds into the Grand Canal.
Mm.
They pass what's called the Giudecca and Zattare. It's a broader area, but still it's displacement of huge amounts of water.
Yeah.
And New Orleans, which lives on tourism, faces a similar thing. And
Yes.
both cities are famous for music and everything. They're very similar.
Yeah.
But the wealth went elsewhere in New
It,
Orleans and in Venice.
yeah. Uh,
And
yeah, right after
yes,
Katrina, there was an interesting influx of this kind of Hollywood of the East because they just lifted a bunch of tax, not sanctions, but just there were a lot of tax benefits and rebates for people, especially in the movie industry, which
mm-hmm.
is why we had this influx of all these movies that were taking place in New Orleans, which was super fun. Especially while I was on the road traveling, I was like, oh, I can watch this movie and I can see, oh, I used to drive by that place, or I know that. It was nice to see the city painted in such a and shown in such a beautiful way, because it's not, I mean, if you go there you'll see that it's not quite what you see on TV. That doesn't mean it's not inviting, it just means it's not as shiny. It's a little grittier.
It's lived in.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And the slight, in some cases, slight decay,
Mm-hmm.
not talking about damage as a result of weather, but just the decay of buildings being 300 or 400 years old,
Indeed.
um, gives them a certain patina and a certain charm and allure
Yeah.
that you cannot get in Charlotte, not to knock Charlotte, North
Yeah, of
Carolina,
course, of course.
a city that has boomed and therefore is kind of shiny
Yeah.
and progressive in terms of its public policy, but it doesn't have what New Orleans has.
Right.
That Tennessee Williams and all the writers from the South, and not only, moved to New Orleans because they were able to be who they were there,
Mm-hmm.
the way people moved to New York
Yeah,
for the same reason. They could be
absolutely.
whatever it is they were in New Orleans, but not back home in Mississippi or
Right.
Alabama or Tennessee, wherever they were from.
Sure.
Um, I want to talk to you about something else because it relates to
Yeah.
your singing. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
The language of Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
languages of Louisiana.
Yeah.
When people and the culture, when people talk about Cajun,
Right.
Cajun,
Yes.
they're talking about Acadian, Acadian. And
Indeed.
Acadia was northeastern North America, what is now parts of Canada, Maine, and a little bit New Hampshire and Vermont.
Right.
And those peoples who traveled then to what was Louisiana, the Louisiana territories,
Mm-hmm.
and the language that evolved is not French, certainly not
Right.
something that Jacques Chirac would understand,
Indeed.
or Emmanuel Macron or Catherine Deneuve.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's not Quebecois, which is a language that I struggle to understand when I go to Montreal,
Right.
although I'm trained in French.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely something otherwise.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people who know the old Brooklyn accent often remark that people from parts of Louisiana near New Orleans
Yes.
sound like they're from Brooklyn.
I've heard that a lot,
New
and
York City.
when I've been walking around, I lived in Brooklyn for a couple of years, and I'd be walking on the street, and my ears would perk up. It's like, that's not what I'm used to hearing up here in the city, and it's very,
Right.
very, very similar. Absolutely. Yeah, my
So when you were growing up
grandparents. Yeah, go ahead.
and
Sorry.
you had parents of Sicilian, German, and French background,
Yeah.
you were surrounded by Acadians, Cajuns. You were
Hmm.
surrounded by persons of African descent. You were
Yeah.
surrounded, for the majority population in New Orleans.
Yes.
Um, you were surrounded by all these different forms of speech.
Yes.
A lot of them very charming and very endearing and very indecipherable. Um,
Right.
how were you speaking as a boy and a young man?
I mean, the New Orleans accent. I mean, okay, let's take somebody like Harry Connick Jr., who we've heard speak a lot, in movies and his on talk show and other things like this. That is a very specific part of New Orleans that he grew up in. It kind of came adopted by lots of people who were from New Orleans, who kind of spoke that way. Like John Goodman in certain movies puts on that New Orleans accent, and I've heard John Goodman speak not when he's when he's not acting, and it's a very kind of just regular. As actors and as singers, we kind of train our native accents out a little bit. We can slip back into it, but we want, as you said, to just be understood by the widest swath of people. So we try and keep it kind of as clear and understandable as possible. But things like Cher, like come on Cher, like when you're saying dear or darling, and it kind of changed into that. And there are lots of les bon temps roulés, for letting the good times roll in New Orleans, and there's lots of that kind of stuff. But in all honesty, I grew up in the suburbs, so it wasn't that I was really in the city where it was so diverse. Now, when we went into the city, the French Quarter, either to go to a restaurant that my family had been going to for generations, for a special occasion, or for like First Communion, we went down to the Quarter and got religious things from where my grandma bought my mom's and her grandma bought her mom's, and so there was that, but we didn't really have. Quite frankly, the money to keep going into the city and doing all that. I mean, my father grew up on a racehorse farm that they didn't own, but they ran, and took care of that. And he was drafted into the Army and then went to college on the VI Bill. My mom's father, the Italian Tafaro, Lorenzo Tafaro is his name, Lawrence, but Lorenzo, was a contractor. He built homes. In fact, he built the home that both me and my sister live in, and we're right next door to each other. After my grandmother passed, she bought that house from the estate, and then we were able to buy the property right next door, and so our children grow up with their cousin right next door and their godmother, and my mom and dad can come over and they can see both their kids in one fell swoop. So it's really nice, and there's a lot of that kind of family. I mean, family is a very big part of New Orleans culture. I know that's not exclusive to New Orleans, but it's not quite the same. I mean, take New York, where everybody's, not everybody, but lots of people came from other places and then decided to settle in New York. Lots of generations of families have been and stayed in New Orleans, despite the hurricanes, despite the other problems, because it is such a rich cultural fabric to just live in. I mean, there's always something going on. I mean, there's 52 weeks in the year, and I think there's 54 different festivals that happen in the French Quarter. It's crazy. You can always go. I mean, everything from the Po' Boy Festival to the Beignet Festival to
Po' Boy being a sandwich, beignet being sort of a fritter.
Indeed, with some powdered sugar on top. Café du Monde, yeah.
Yep.
So
the Café du Monde is famous for its coffee, which has chicory, ground chicory.
Yes.
In it. Yeah.
Sometimes I bring a can, of Café du Monde because of the chicory, and I just, when you order a coffee, regular coffee, before cappuccinos and lattes and all this stuff came famous, if you got a coffee in New Orleans, you were getting coffee and chicory. That's it. Yeah. Gets your milk. You could have an Olé, which is half milk, half coffee, but
the reason for the chicory, of course, is that it was cheaper than coffee.
Sure.
It was a way of extending the coffee. The way in New York and the Northeast, people of a certain age remember that there were lemon peels that were put on the side of the demi-tasse, the espresso cup.
Okay.
And people thought that's what Italians do. Italians don't do that.
I didn't
know
that.
They put the lemon peel in New York because the basic quality of the coffee was poor, because it was so expensive for immigrants, that they would correct it with lemon peel. But Italians don't use lemon peel.
Super interesting. Yeah, I've never had I never had a lemon with my coffee or my espresso in Italy, but yeah.
No. But there you reminded me that there's this song, and I'm not a singer. You are. You can sing if you want.
Okay.
You know what it means to leave New Orleans?
Oh, to miss New Orleans,
Miss New
absolutely.
Orleans. Sorry.
Actually sang it for my wife at my wedding and played the trumpet for it. It used to be something I would do as an encore. Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans and miss it each night and day? It's a great tune. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the point too, is when a city has its own music culture with its own music and its own songs.
Yeah.
Very few places in America have that. New York has it.
Yes, absolutely.
But I mean, certainly the state of Tennessee has produced a remarkable amount of fantastic music.
Yes.
But it's not, they don't sing about Nashville, or they don't, a little they sing about Memphis, but not too much. But
Right.
there's a whole body of music about New York City. There's a whole body of music about New Orleans.
Sure, yeah.
New Orleans. And I mention this because when we get to talking, as we will, about opera,
Uh-huh.
I want people who are getting to know you to understand that you're not just from some place in the middle of the United States, but
Right. Yeah.
you're really from a place that is singular in the world, and certainly in the United States,
Yeah.
for the degree to which it's different from anywhere else. When you're in New Orleans, you don't think, oh, this could be Omaha or St. Louis.
That's
Nothing
definitely
wrong with Omaha or St. Louis. I like them.
Indeed,
But
yeah.
you just, Omaha could be St. Louis with a little more diversity in St. Louis.
Right.
Kansas City has its barbecue.
Sure.
All these wonderful cities in the middle of the United States, many of which were part of the greater Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, St. Louis
Yeah.
had more of a French character than some of the others.
Sure.
But nonetheless, they're not New Orleans.
Right. Yeah.
And so that when I go there, you sort of become intoxicated, whether you drink or not, just with the atmosphere, with the weather,
Yes.
with the humidity,
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
with the way you get slowed down by things sort of grinding slowly, and it's all right.
Yeah.
But it's just not like the United States.
Right.
So when you were growing up, when did opera come into your life as perhaps attending opera or knowing of opera?
Well, I didn't see my first opera until I was a senior in high school. Because at the arts high school at NOCA, we were given free tickets to see a performance of Deflator Mouse, actually, which strictly speaking is not opera, but that was the first time I went into the Mahalia Jackson Theater, which is where the operas are performed nowadays, and saw it. And you know, part of the reason that I wasn't completely captivated at that time was because we were in the highest, last seats in the house. And I just wasn't able to visually connect because I was too far back. The sound was good, as it usually is in a balcony, but I can't say that it was a life-changing experience. Now, again, even before that, I remember, because the Three Tenors, especially the Los Angeles Three Tenors concert, had come out on VHS and CD, and my mom got me those both for Christmas because I had my grandparents on her side were playing Mario Lanza records at the house, and of course they played some of the old crooners as well before that. But the Mario Lanza CDs, "Be My Love," it was the first time I had heard anybody singing like that, and I was just like, oh wow. And then I think in jest one day I just kind of broke out into, "Because you come to me with naught save love." And my grandma was like, "That's pretty good." And I was like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, I think it's pretty good." I was like, "Well," so I took it to my choir teacher. He was both the choir director, but also taught voice both at Tulane University and Loyola University. And I said, "Listen, I got something I want to show you. I kind of have two voices, one of which is my choir voice, which was, much more contained. It's all about blending with your section and the greater group. And then I have this other voice, which is kind of like yelling." And he was like, "Well, why don't you show me what you got?" And so I sang him just a C major scale from C to middle C. And then I kept going, and I went from middle C up to high C. And he was like, I did not expect to hear that. He's like, we definitely need to explore this and get you ready for some college scholarship auditions. And so that's what we did. I sang Comfort Ye in Every Valley from Messiah. I sang O del mio dolce ardor, one of the 24 Italian songs. And then I sang Handel's Where'er You Walk. That was my package of 3 pieces to audition for college. And that was kind of the real start. Once I got a full scholarship for that, and they were like, oh, you're a lovely piano player. You're also very, good organist. Because I'd been playing in church since I was in 7th grade. And I started directing choir when I was probably 14 at Lutheran churches, and I sang at the High Holy Days in the synagogue at Temple Sinai. It's a very ecumenical city, so I sang everywhere and played in Baptist churches and Methodist churches. My main job was at a Catholic church, but I was really kind of all over the place and playing weddings and playing cocktail piano for parties. And I was able to do that. But yeah, the opera bug really solidified after that first year of college, and my voice really opened up, and I sang, this was a bit ambitious for my teacher to give it to me, but he gave me like La Donna è mobile and Recondita Armonia from Tosca. I mean, these are not things I would give a freshman nowadays in my own teaching. No. But, the point of Recondita Armonia in Tosca is it's all about legato and keeping your line going. And the B flat, which isn't, kind of the hardest. They got a couple of A's in there, but, the B flat at the end on Tosca, say tu is kind of tricky, but it wasn't hard for me to get that note out. So there was that. And then La Donna Mobile was an aria that served me really well early in my career and then also later in my career. But I went to the Aspen Music Festival and school that summer.
Just interrupt you. Do you know the story of the creation of the aria La Donna Mobile?
No, tell me. I'd love to hear it.
You. You are there, Venice, 1851.
Yeah.
Giuseppe Verdi is composing an opera that he knew would be a hit and arguably his finest or most successful opera. I never say which is the best. Sure. But he just knew that he really had something going with Rigoletto.
Yeah.
And so good was the aria that begins Act 3, La Donna Mobile, that Verdi decided he could not rehearse it with the tenor in the theater.
This part I know, yeah.
So he hired a gondolier, and he took the tenor out in a gondola, and they studied it, and Verdi taught it to him in a gondola. And the gondolier was sworn to secrecy. He was paid a lot of money by Verdi to not sing the song.
Oh, I love this.
Because Verdi wanted this to be a big hit. Anyway, the gondolier went back, finished his turn, went to the Osteria, which is the wine bar of Venice.
Right.
And in Venice, when you have a glass of wine, it's called an ombra, a shadow. It was usually white wine. And he had a few. And he said to his fellow gondoliers, he said, I learned this great song today, La Donna Mobile.
Oh, my goodness.
All the gondoliers were singing. Verdi was walking home from a rehearsal and heard all the gondoliers singing La Donna Mobile in the wine bar. And he burst. He was furious, and he had a temper. And he said, you are not allowed to sing this anywhere. And they didn't. So when the premiere happened, it was a huge hit. But it was born in Venice.
What a great story! What a great story! I mean, again, not to compare, but it is definitely one of his catchiest tunes. Sure. Everybody knows La Donna Mobile. But yeah, so I went to Aspen and I sang in the competition, which was a concerto aria competition, and I won. I was one of 3 winners. But everybody else who was singing was at, Juilliard for their masters or Eastman as a senior and so I was like, okay, well, if I can compete and not just compete, but stand shoulder to shoulder with these singers who are a little bit older and at the biggest conservatories in the world, I need to wake up here, because at Loyola I was very much in a small pond. And I'm not in any way, lazy. No, I'm not lazy, but if I'm fixed on something, I will almost hyper fix on it. And so that became my sole focus. I still worked as an organist and all that, but singing became my priority, and I did it every day. And thankfully, La Donna Immobile was one of the arias that I sang in the Met Finals, which I did when I was 19 years old. So I wasn't the youngest, but I was pretty young. And I sang Pourquoi me réveiller from Werther, and I sang La Donna Immobile. And even when I did my stage Met audition later in my career, before the Troyens, before Guillaume Tell, and before all this stuff, I sang La Donna Immobile again as my, it was probably 18 years after, or maybe 17 years after I'd sung it the first time on that stage, and then things started rolling.
Yep. I want to make one mention about another university in New Orleans, and then we're going to continue with your career.
Absolutely.
Because it relates to language in New Orleans.
Okay.
I had two cousins. One of them unfortunately passed. And she, the one who passed, went to Sophie Newcomb College.
Yes,
and her brother went to Tulane.
Yes.
And this is sort of, Tulane is the famous school, and Sophie Newcomb is the women's part of Tulane.
Yeah.
And Tulane is a very fine school. My cousin, the woman, was sent basically to meet a proper man.
Well, that's okay.
Unfortunately, that's all they envisioned for her. She was very artistic and lovely and all that. But the idea was she was a Southern girl, that her eligibility in life was to find a husband, whereas her brother was to have a career, and he certainly does have a career.
Yeah.
But my cousin Eva was very bubbly, and she loved imitating the way people spoke in New Orleans. She was northern Florida, which is the American South. It's not the Florida that we think of as, Miami and all that. This was northern Florida.
Sure.
Horse farms and grapefruit groves. And Daytona Beach, cars on the beach kind of place. And she said, Fred, when back in Florida, we all say y'all, meaning you, whether it's singular or plural.
Right.
In New Orleans, they say y'all when it's just you, and it's all y'all when it's plural.
That is 100%.
Like the French, vous, and there's toi, and vous, German and Italian and Spanish, these languages all have that. And I realized that, Eva had to learn how to speak a different English in New Orleans than the English that she spoke in North Florida.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's part of what makes this place so particular.
I have a very fond place in my heart for Tulane because, Tulane and Loyola are right next to each other on St. Charles Avenue. I mean, immediately next to each other. The music building and theaters is a little bit further back. But I did what was called junior lyric theater. So this was musical theater for high school students, essentially. And that's when got most of my stage experience, because I really had sung a lot, but I had not been on stage. And so I did Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. I did The Coach in Damn Yankees. And also, it's just such a wonderful time and place. And for me, and as I said, my teacher Drew taught both at Loyola and Tulane, and so I got to do young junior Philharmonic, and then when I did the Met auditions, the district round was in the theater at Tulane, the regional round was in the theater at Loyola. So these were places that I had thankfully been singing for almost 10 years, and at 17 or 18, 19 years old, that's a long time in your life. Over half of my life I spent doing it. So, I mean, that city just not adopted me, but just propped me up and supported me so much in my talent, especially in my collegiate years. And then after, they, the ladies of the Metropolitan Opera Guild would hold fundraisers to send me to Italy to study, which they actually did. And I gave a recital and thanked them, and then came back and sang recitals to help raise money for the future, the prize money that they were going to give out in the competition that year. And it just was a really wonderfully supportive and loving community to be from.
I wonder if you ever came across a lady from the Metropolitan Opera Guild who was from the South, and she was really, really, and I mean this in the best way, from the South, because I have Southern family in Florida and North Carolina, so I know this. they're different from us folks up north, even though we're the same age. And her name was Patter, Patter Gimber, Gimber.
Yeah,
And
that,
Patter
yeah.
was, I think, from Alabama. I'm not sure. Would become so emotionally involved in the successes of the young people, such as
Sure.
yourself, who
Yeah.
were in the program, that she just burst into tears.
Oh.
And I remember I had to console Patter. She said, "The way that child sang, it gives me the vapors." And I said, "Patter, I don't have a cure for the vapors. It's all right. It's a Southern thing."
Right. Oh, that's so funny. I mean, yeah, when I made it to the finals in 2000, there was a group of 12 people from the Metropolitan Opera Guild who all came up, bought tickets, and took me and my family and my grandma, all of us, out to dinner afterwards. And I didn't even win. And they still were like, "We're just so proud of you."
It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, the Met Guild and the it's now called the LaFont competition.
Yes. Right.
But it used to be the Met Finals, but it's the same program.
Yes.
And you're, along with many great singers, you didn't win, but you placed in the finals.
Right.
There's a grand tradition of that, so not to worry, because you've done great, and a lot of them have. My recent guest, Joyce DiDonato, was another one who did not win.
I didn't know that about Joyce, but again, hasn't slowed her down.
Didn't win. But no complaints. She's doing fantastic work.
Yeah.
But I brought up language in part because within New Orleans and Cajun and Acadian and all of that, there is also, quote, pure French.
Yes.
And there is a tradition in New Orleans among the so-called educated classes of speaking very refined French.
Oh, yes.
And I've encountered it because, again, my cousin Eva did not pronounce it French, although she was a French major. She pronounced it French, Frinch.
Right.
And she said, "Well, Fred, I'm going to major in French." And I'm going to Paris. And then she said, "Paris, France."
Right. It's so funny you say this, and my immediate reaction is, well, yeah, that's how you say it. And then of course I'm like, no, well, having traveled and worked in a lot in France, it's kind of like, yeah, but it's just, I having gone to and doing my undergrad in New Orleans, I didn't really leave until I was 21, 22 years old. And so, I was there. I was really, really there. And steeped in that, and then I moved to New York from.
But part of my point is, one very distinctive aspect of your career among many, is the degree to which you have become a heroic French tenor, which is a very French language tenor, but French tenor, which is a very particular thing in the opera world.
Yeah, that's true.
And most of the heroic French tenors tended to be from France. Placido Domingo sang that repertory. John Vickers and Nicolai Guetta, to some degree, sang that repertory. But not many Americans, certainly.
No. Georges Thiel and a lot of these...
was Canadian.
Yeah, and a lot of these...
Love Canada. No complaints about Canada. We love them.
Yeah.
We want to be them.
Absolutely. Isn't that the truth? But yeah, it was, I did a project on the first full-chested high C that was sung by Gabriel Dupré, who was French, but then went to Italy to study the Italian technique and came back, and the primo tenore, or the tenor at the Paris Opera, Adolphe Nourri, had premiered Guillaume Tell, but did more of the voix mix style. And so it was still there, but it was not that...
voix mix. Many years ago, I had Marcello Giordani as my guest in my NYU class. Yeah. And I had him explain voix mixed, and it exists on video. But I've not asked anyone for 25 years to explain what is voix mix. So please, s'il vous plaît.
Yeah, voix mix is the mix, as it is, between the chest voice and the head voice. If you were to sing falsetto, that is completely head voice. If you were to sing in the mix, it has to be really released at the level of the larynx so that it then resonates in your chest as well. We see this in things like Pearl Fishers a lot in the famous aria there at the beginning, the dream from Manon, On ferme les yeux, and all these things, and so it really was kind of a way that it was not just their repertoire that set them apart, but their way of singing that set them apart. And so then after Dupré came back and sang Guillaume Tell the second season, well, then Nourri tried to go and study in Italy and do it, and unfortunately his voice was just not built to sustain that kind of vocal weight in that tessitura of his voice. But then Meyerbeer and all these guys were writing things that were just, stratospherically high and long. These 5-act French operas.
Yeah.
I kind of stumbled because Marcello was studied with Bill Schumann, and I came to Bill Schumann before I went to AVA. And he was like, "Oh, you're like a baby Marcello. Like, that's what I'm going to do for you." And Marcello's voice...
AVA, Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia.
Sorry,
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Marcello's voice sat a little bit higher than mine did, maybe like a half step. But we had very similar functions of the voice. I mean, his voice was very squarely in the Italianate timbre, which is beautiful and gorgeous. Mine never fell into a particular... Oh, that's Italian. Oh, that's German. That's English. French, yes, maybe, but I would say even the color of my voice was not particularly French. I was able to do that and sustain it, and kind of a turning point was when I found that Act 4 aria from Guillaume Tell that I worked on in French the first time, and that became a calling card of mine through my AVA years, and then obviously into my career. Even though Les Troyens happened earlier than Guillaume Tell did, I had learned Guillaume Tell before I learned Les Troyens.
That aria arguably is my favorite male aria in all of opera.
It's gorgeous.
I love it.
It's gorgeous,
and it's also impressive. My living room.
Oh, thank you.
I was raised on the Nikolai Gedda recording.
Sure, yeah.
And it was pretty fantastic. And then I started hearing people, yourself included, live in theaters doing it. It's just breathtaking.
Oh, thank
you. And Guillaume Tell, Guglielmo Tell, William Tell is one of my favorite operas, and I persuaded a conductor friend of mine who was hesitant to do it to conduct it, and he had a huge success with it.
Yeah.
And he loved it, but he sort of said, "No, Rossini is not for me." He wanted other things.
Yeah. And it was Rossini's last opera, right? That was the last one he wrote, I think.
He retired with that. And I always tell people who put down Rossini that he and Berlioz are my two favorite opera composers.
Well, then we could talk a lot, Fred.
Yeah. And therefore, because it's about their orchestration, I had Susan Graham on for my 5th anniversary show, and she was very eloquent on April 25th, talking about Berlioz and what he means, what he brings to an orchestra and
of
to
course.
A piece. But the thing is that I always say that operas like without Semidamide by Rossini, we would not have had Aida.
Sure, yeah.
Without Guillaume Tell, we would not have had Il Trovatore.
Absolutely.
That you can find the direct links out of Rossini. Without Italiano and Algeri, believe it or not, we would not have had Nabucco.
Yeah.
I know that seems strange, but I believe that profoundly.
Oh, I definitely see the line.
At Rossini, you see what Wagner and Verdi became. Yes. And both men drew richly from Rossini. Rossini was very generous with both Wagner and Verdi as younger men. Rossini, 1792, Wagner and Verdi, 1813. So there was a generation more.
Right.
And Rossini was incredibly generous as an older figure who by then had retired. He retired around 1830, a little before.
Yeah.
And Wagner and Verdi were teenagers. So there was no competition really, but Rossini, what does it feel like to sing Rossini? I've never asked someone that directly, but what does it feel like to sing Rossini?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely challenging, but it's definitely fun. because he does have I feel like even, there's a joy in, so, okay, let's say this. The first time I sang Rossini was Barber of Seville when I was in undergrad. And we did it in English, so there's obviously that disconnect. But the opera director at the time felt like trying to sing a whole role is already a big enough task than to worry about, also doing it in another language, and you're going to probably not pronounce it very well. And then you're going to learn it incorrectly, and then you're going to have to unlearn it, and it's all this stuff. But that was super fun. Obviously, it's a very different kind of role than Arnauld is. But there's different kinds. There's the really fioritura, like very fireworky kind of Rossini, which I didn't really do, like his Otello, like even in the Barber of Seville, I sang the more lyric parts, and we cut the arias that were like, at the end, where it's just kind of like fireworks all over the place. I didn't really have that aspect, and I think that's what kind of set me apart differently in the French repertoire, was the size of my voice, also like Marcello's, the size of my voice, and then also the facility with the extreme upper range that allowed me to sustain it and do it over 10, 15 years in that. But to answer your question, singing Rossini is wonderful. It's got such a bubbly joy of life, especially in his comic operas. But even still, the feeling of longing that the character of Arnauld has. And when he talks about Guillaume being in the jail and captured by the Austrians and trying to do this, and it's like, Guillaume est mon père, salut des combats. It just has this like sadness, but a joy and a bubbly feeling that you need for that coloratura kind of Rossini singing style.
Yeah. And what's it like to sing Berlioz?
Challenging. It's challenging, but it's beautiful. I mean, I really, love Berlioz. I did not know of Les Troyens, or really most of Berlioz, before I was singing Puritani in Greece, and they lost their tenor for Les Troyens in Amsterdam. And the tenor had some health issues and pulled out 6 months before the contract, so we're not talking 6 weeks, much less 6 hours. So I had time to learn that epically long role, but I learned the entrance aria, and then I learned the second 2/3, I guess, of the big aria in Act 5, and sent it on video to John Nelson, who was going to conduct in Amsterdam. And he said, great, let's go, let's do it. And at that point, I started working on learning that role, which is just, it has everything that you would expect a singer to do. Very heroic and high stuff, and also very light, beautiful singing with Didon in Act 4, in trying to console her. And then you've got this, again, 10-minute aria in Act 5, which is, again, maybe 5 hours and 15 minutes into the start of the show. There was 90 minutes between my second and third entrance. And I had never been in a situation where I had to keep my voice kind of ready to go, and in that, warmed up and ready to go position for 90 minutes in the middle of a 5-hour opera. So of course it was conceived as 2 operas to be given over 2 nights, but that's not the way it's done anymore. Yeah. So there's that. But then I got to know Berlioz better through Damnation de Faust, which I sang a lot on stage at the Paris Opera. I did it in concert at the Met. I did it in concert in Vienna and Paris and Toulouse, a lot of places. And it's great. I mean, if you're used to singing vocal lines that Donizetti and Rossini and Verdi will give you, these lines are much more difficult because of the language, I would say, and the way that the words are set, much more instrumentally than vocally, which is what we're looking at with the Italians. It's not. Some people have said this repertoire is almost unsingable, and I can understand why a lot of people might feel that way, but it definitely, maybe it's just in my my physiology, that it fit my throat in a way that some Italian repertoire just didn't. And I think that was hard. Earlier in my career, it was hard to gain traction because of not being a specific kind of Italian German tenor. But I was really happy to find it, and it's been very, very good to me over the years. Yeah.
So you saying, and Susan Graham said something similar to what I'm asking, that the voice, in this case the tenor voice, but it could be the mezzo voice,
sure,
is one of the instruments that Berlioz composed for, as opposed to composing for orchestra and voice?
I think it's a great way to put it. It has a lot to do with which vowels you're singing on these high tessitura notes. I think it has to do with, French, obviously, the consonants are, but you have a lot of like mixed vowels, which you don't have in Italian, and nuit, and these other things that become very difficult to make sure that you don't get the base of your tongue engaged in order to try to make the sound of the vowel be as native as possible. So it is tough. It's tough, and I'm glad that I was able to kind of master that in Italian before I had to do it more in French. But the French became, Les Veuves Siciliennes, all these things that I just did, Les Martyrs, things that I did and had to learn. And some of them I only did once, and some of them I actually didn't even get to do the performances. But I did love living with this French repertoire for a good 10 years and peppering it with standard rep to kind of give my voice a break along the way. Lots of bohèmes and Carmens and butterflies and things like that. Because I couldn't sing a whole season of this kind of repertoire and last as long as I did. I'm not going to stereotype a whole nation because I love France, but did the very discerning operatic population of France embrace you as a lost son because you were doing this repertoire that's so close to them, and you happen to be Francophone Nouvelle-Orléans? Maybe I would say that I definitely felt embraced as a native son by them. I mean, Warner Classics at the time was the classical division was headed by Alain Lasseron, so a Frenchman, and he said that one of the biggest things that would help this CD sell and why Warner decided to partner with me on this was because my pronunciation sounded so authentic and native, and even if everyone knew that I was not French, I did have this French heritage, which I think they took pride in. And I remember when I sang Carmen in Paris for the first time, they just were very complimentary on my pronunciation, especially in my dialogue, because I was not native. But I had dedicated the time to make. I mean, I had a wonderful French coach who was on me, and that's what we paid him for, But it was hard work, but it definitely paid off, and I sang almost as much in France as I sang everywhere else combined.
No, and that really says something when. Right. It's kind of like if you are not an Italian and you sing at La Scala or San Carlo in Naples or wherever. Yeah. And they really feel that you're doing their repertory honor, they go wild. Or the Austrians, the Viennese with certain kinds of operas like Rosenkavalier.
Oh, for
and
sure.
And the Germans with Wagner and so forth.
Yeah.
And the Spanish with Well, it's very particular. I've heard many of the greatest international singers, Europeans, sing American music and completely stumble, and they can be wonderful singers.
Sure,
but English is not an easy language to sing in.
No, it's
even
not.
If you speak excellent conversational English, it's not. Why is English not easy to sing in?
I think because part of it, and this is really on the forefront of what I'm thinking about right now, is teaching young native-speaking Americans how to find legato. I think that because we don't, even as if I listen to myself right now, I'm not speaking in a very legato way. If I was, it would sound more like this, and there would not be so much, kind of use of my throat to stop the sound. I think that's part of it. I think, again, for native speakers, there are so many rules in how to pronounce different, the is pronounced the unless it's pronounced the, before which word, and it's just confusing. And having studied a lot of foreign languages, English is not a language that if you look at it, you just like Italian, they don't even say, how do you spell? They say, how did you write? Because why would you make the distinction? Because you write it exactly the way it sounds. That does not happen in English. I mean, it doesn't happen in French either, but certainly not in English. It's complicated, but I think it gets back to the why singing is hard is because of the clusters of consonants, and the lack of an inherent legato in the pace and the cadence of the language.
I like that term, clusters of consonants. Polish and Welsh could be like that as well.
Oh goodness, and Czech is also
Czech.
Words like smirt. There's no vowel in that word. There's just a
Czech. You made your European debut as the foreign prince in Rusalka at Wexford.
I did. That was a big turning
Wexford
point.
is a lovely festival. I've worked there.
Yeah.
You were a young man. What was it like being in Wexford with the lovely Irish people? They're beautiful theater, and they're so very welcoming, and they talk to you all the time.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful. I mean, obviously not having the language barrier being a hurdle, even though the accent was kind of hard to, especially in Wexford. It's pretty rural, and the accents are very thick. But I got used to it. I loved it. We spent 9 weeks there. And the year that we did Rusalka, they were building the new theater. So they had torn down the old one. They were building a new one. So we were out in a tent at an old castle that was there. And so it was really kind of charming and endearing. And I remember we were singing as the sun was going down, like Santa Fe. We'd start around like 7:38, and then the sun would set during the show. But they on the grounds they had all these peacocks, and as soon as we'd start singing, the peacocks are going crazy outside. But I mean, the warmth and the generosity and also Ireland is another place where music is so much a part of you go into the pub and there is a band playing in the back with the pipes and how many times did I get asked to sing "Oh Danny Boy" and then 3 pints of Guinness line up, right? It's just a wonderful they're wonderfully generous and warm people.
What was the darling version you sang there, boy? Brian. Yeah, Brian, are you Irish as well, my dear?
Just honorary.
But Ireland, to my knowledge, and I stand corrected if I'm corrected.
Okay.
It's the only nation in the world that has a musical instrument on its flag. It has the harp.
Yeah, the harp. Yeah,
I think it's the only one.
Yeah,
my knowledge. Canada has maple leaves. We have stars.
Right.
Great.
Right.
France has nothing. Italy has nothing. Mexico has an eagle or a turkey. It has a bird on it of some kind.
Yeah, it's a bird. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I love it.
Most don't, but Ireland has a musical instrument. That says a lot to me.
Yeah, indeed.
So today is July 25th of 2025. Right. By the way, it's my 275th program today.
Wow. Well,
and
thanks for having me.
Part of what I wanted you on today was you're about to embark on a new adventure.
I am, yeah.
August 1st.
For sure.
You are becoming an associate professor of music in voice, as that is called, on music in voice.
Right.
At the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University, which everyone calls IU. Now, if people listening elsewhere in the world hear Indiana, I don't know what they think of, because it's a great state, but it's not. People don't automatically think that what is arguably the finest music school in a public university in the United States would be in Indiana, in southern Indiana.
Sure.
Because in America we have private universities, we have conservatories like Juilliard and Peabody and AVA and Berkeley and all these different schools, Music Academy, the West, Eastman, and Rochester.
Yeah.
And then we have private schools like Manhattan School of Music. There are many, but then there are the public universities.
Right.
And in the United States, there's a group called the Big Ten, which used to be 10 universities in the upper Midwest. Now it's something like 24 schools, and it
Right.
has University of California, Los Angeles, University of Maryland, and Rutgers. I don't get
Right.
that, but
If I learn
that's
anything about
football.
it, I'll let you know, Fred.
That's football. But the core Big Ten universities were land grant universities at a time when America promoted public education for people who did not have a lot of money,
Right.
and especially for people of the state they were from. So I
Sure.
went to one of these universities. I'm a graduate of the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and but I'm from New York City.
Right.
But Wisconsin is a wonderful university. Each of these Big Ten schools, Minnesota, Northwestern, Purdue, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and
Right.
Penn State, I think I named them all,
Mm.
of the original 10, are wonderful big universities. Northwestern and Purdue are a bit smaller, but
Hmm.
very large universities
Yeah.
that really specialize in education for the young people from those states and neighboring states.
Yes.
So that if you went to the University of Wisconsin, you were from Wisconsin, you could go to the University of Minnesota as an in-state person
Hmm.
if they were teaching something in Minnesota that they were not teaching in Wisconsin,
Oh, I
and
see.
vice
Yeah.
versa. And
Right.
a few of these other schools had these compacts among them.
Hmm.
Wisconsin had a junior year abroad program in Italy with Indiana University, with IU.
Okay.
And IU actually was sort of the organizer of it. And many of my classmates in Italy were from Indiana, not from Wisconsin.
Uh-huh.
Um, but that for me was life changing. And I chose the University of Wisconsin in part because of the program it had in Italy, because
Hmm.
most junior abroad programs from America go to Florence and Rome, and you don't learn much Italian. And it's
Right.
more like, having 9 months, getting an Italian girlfriend or boyfriend, and
Sure.
eating positive. Mine was very serious because
Yeah.
Bologna has DOMS, which is of the Juilliard of Italy. And I
Mm.
knew that I wanted to study opera production and design and all that.
Right.
And Indiana facilitated that for me.
That's wonderful.
And so I became more interested in learning about Indiana University,
Yeah.
and came to know, as most people at opera know, that when you don't even have to say Indiana.
Right.
I went to Wisconsin, went to Michigan, I went to Yale, I went to IU, and
I went to IU.
everybody knows that IU is this epic
Yes.
music school
Hmm.
in southern Indiana, and where opera, world class opera. Jamie Barton has studied there. Everybody stayed there. Harold Van Ness, who was my guest, teaches there.
Right.
Martina Royo taught there. Virginia Zayani, who I knew, taught there.
Margaret Harshaw.
All
Yeah.
these, yeah, Margaret Harshaw.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave anybody out. But the
Sure.
point, when Indiana calls and you're in opera, you go.
Oh, for sure.
And they've called you and Kelly Markgraf, a wonderful baritone,
Yeah.
who are starting as professors next week on August 1st.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
can't wait.
how did this happen? And do I have to call you Professore from now on? I can't call you Bryan.
You do not have to call me professore. In fact, even my students, I don't insist. It's
All right.
where I was at for the past 3 years at Westminster. It's a little bit more formal, and they ask
Yeah.
that you be referred to as professor. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to go and work at a school that does so much opera. They do at least 4 productions a year, full productions, huge production. I mean, they have their musical arts center. The stage is a replica of the Met stage. It's the same
Yeah.
size. The house is not, but the stage actually is. And so, I love teaching, and, I think my expertise lies really squarely in the operatic world. I've taught classes at Westminster called The Singing Actor. Of course, I have my students in my studio. But the stagecraft is where I feel like I really was kind of able. I mean, being on stage and an opera singer is all about multitasking, right? Making sure your costume and the props that you need are all there. Especially in a show like Bohème, where you've got the 4 guys and you've got bread and wine and cigars and wood and
Herring.
stoves and
Don't forget the
herring and
herring.
Exactly. So like I just really kind of thrived when I was like, okay, that's why I like being an organist, because you've got to play, but you also have to use your feet, and then you have to pull stops, and you have to hit the pistons. I like multitasking like that, and so I'm going to have a studio of 18 students plus our studio class. And hopefully over the course of while I'm there are going to be other opportunities for me to help with whatever they need me to do. Actually, whatever they need me to do, I'm happy to help out. I really love teaching. I've always loved teaching. COVID gave me the opportunity to go back to school and get a master's in vocal pedagogy from Westminster Choir College. It's a hybrid program where you can do a lot of the work online, and I'll say this, it's way more vigorous and rigorous than I thought it was going to be. There was a lot of writing, there was a lot of technical voice science and acoustics, and then other classes like voice methods and vocal methods. But I really loved, I had my reputation as a singer, and AVA is Academy of Vocal Arts is a very old school kind of operatic training. So now I feel like I'm even better prepared to teach singers now, because I can come from the pedagogy voice science world and then use that knowledge to kind of stay within the old school terminology of appoggia and legato and on all these kinds of...
What is appoggia? I know, but what is appoggia?
So appoggia is an Italian verb that means to lean, and it's the idea that we lean the voice onto the body, or what we're essentially talking about is the support mechanism, how we connect our voice to our body so that we do get that chest resonance that is free and open and easy, that then connects up into the head, which gives us the brightness and the squillo, especially for tenors. Squillo is the ring that a tenor voice kind of is known for because of the tessitura and the height at which we kind of sing and use our voices. So yeah, it means to lean, and it's the idea of leaning the vocal cords down upon that air, as opposed to bringing the cords together and then pushing air through them, which is it's not a coordination that can be sustained for very long.
So we're talking anatomy here.
Yeah.
When a singer is singing, let's say you, but it could be other people you teach or other people you work with.
Sure.
Should they know the anatomy and have a vision of what is happening, what it should look like? I ask this because there was he's a very, very, very famous American tenor.
Yeah.
Who he was in Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
Did this film, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a video of his vocal cords vibrating and everything phonating. And it was scary because it was like being down this man's throat.
Yes. It is scary, and it's very strange.
It was very intimate. And, we're not looking at, quote, private parts. It was not sexual.
Right,
but we were so completely present with this man's vibration that it was hard for me to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's all those things that you just said. I do think that, having a relationship with a laryngologist or an otolaryngologist as a singer is super duper important, especially once you're in career and once you're traveling around, in order to have like a baseline video of what your cords look like when you're healthy, not when you're sick. Because if everything's inflamed and you've got the doctors around the world, because sometimes when you get sick in Vienna or Munich or London or wherever, they're just seeing you that one time. It's just a snapshot of your cords on that day. And if we don't know what they normally look like when you're healthy, then there's no way to understand what's normal for your voice, because singers can have imperfections in their anatomy all the time that don't affect the singing at all. But some can, and so if something new has popped up and you're starting to have a problem with your range or hoarseness or fatigue, and your stamina is not great, these are all things that I think singers these days absolutely need to know about. The voice science part, I think it's good for everybody to kind of understand what we're working with here. It's a good, the mysterious part about singing is you can't see anything of what's going on besides what you see on the person's face and what you hear with your ears. That doesn't mean it's not happening. It's just that we're not able to see it. So I think the more we can visualize what is actually happening inside our throats, the better. I think that's definitely important for a teacher to know. Does the singer need to know the ins and outs of all that? Maybe, maybe not. I think it depends on the personality. Some people will feel more secure and confident knowing exactly what's going on. Some people are happy just to think about, oh, on this note, I'm going to think the color purple. This is not an approach that ever really worked for me. And I think singing the repertoire that I did, if I didn't know exactly what I was doing with my throat, I wouldn't make it past Act 2, much less 5 acts of 8-run show of a full season of 50 to 60 performances. It doesn't happen that way.
I figured out pretty early that I did not want to be a singer. I studied singing.
Okay.
Baritone with really good baritones. But
Mm-hmm.
the second of my 2 baritones said to me, basically, you'd be a better stage director. And
Okay.
he was the stage director. He was Tito Gobi.
Oh, right.
And
sure.
so
Well,
he was
yeah.
magnificent. He did not have the most beautiful voice, but he was one of the
Sure.
most magnificent singers and actors. And he said to me, "You're not stupid. Thank you very much." And he said, "But I see your ability elsewhere." And
Yeah.
I was tending toward that anyway. And I was also tending toward the idea of speaking, public speaking and broadcasting and so on.
Sure.
And I continued studying singing, not to be a singer. I knew immediately I was not going to do that.
Right.
But for 2 reasons: to understand what you guys have to do
Sure.
and what the limitations are,
Mm-hmm.
but also to advantage my speaking and
Yeah.
know how to stand, know how to project. I've been known to speak without microphones for 3 hours and not have vocal strain,
Good for
but I
you.
know
Yeah.
how to speak with a microphone
Sure.
and how that changes your presentation because it's an intermediary,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it can also be used in a positive way if you don't shout into it. Because I know you have a mic down there, I have a mic, little one down here.
Yeah.
Yes, mine is.
Well, this one's for recording singing mainly, but I'm using
Okay.
it. I'm using it for today because why not?
Okay. But this has been my mic broadcast. It was given to me by the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, Malibu, because I was
great.
doing lectures for them online at the beginning of the pandemic, and
Uh-huh.
it works beautifully. So it
Yeah,
better
you
than
sound
one
great.
I had.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I believe that everyone needs to learn to sing because
yeah.
so many people I know have vocal strain. They're hoarse, they're coughing,
Yes.
they run out of breath. They don't sound good. They shout.
Right.
And when people shout, it's harder to engage in a conversation with them.
Yes, because they sound angry all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And there are
indeed.
people, a couple of politicians who do that all the time. But for the
Indeed.
most part, I like dialogue. In other
Yeah.
words, dialogue to people,
Mm-hmm.
back and forth.
Sure.
Monologue is where I'm just speaking to you and you would sing an aria. It's a monologue.
Right.
But we have lost, I believe, the art of listening.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a
And
doubt.
that comes in conversation, but that also comes in people making music,
Yeah.
as you do.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to listen for nuance and color in artistry and singing and that, we can use, if we know how, we can employ all these different ways to use our voice for not just not just beauty, but also sadness and nostalgia and all these other kind of things. But if the listener doesn't know, to your point, if the listener doesn't even know how to distinguish between those, then they're not getting the full experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like flavors
There
in
are
a
great
dish.
actors
Yeah.
who have beautiful or not beautiful voices. A great actor who had a beautiful voice was John Gielgud. And his
Okay.
voice was so beautiful that it was almost seductive, and you
Right.
allowed yourself to bathe in the sound of his voice.
Yeah.
Other actors maybe did not have, let me pick one, not my favorite, but I think he's a good example. George C. Scott
Okay.
had a rather raspy, unpleasant voice,
Right.
but he was so communicative.
Yeah.
And I've never named him as my favorite of anything because he's not, but I think it's a good example
Sure.
because it was such a particular voice
Right.
that you had to listen. His former wife, Colleen Dewhurst, had a similar voice, but she could put so much more color and warmth or sadness. The emotions
Right.
that she colored her speech with was remarkable. One of the great creative experiences of my life was Carnegie Hall a number of years ago. Did the opera Electra in concert with Ava Martone.
Oh, wow.
And the Boston Symphony as Electra.
Yeah.
And before that, they did Colleen Dewhurst reciting monologues from the play Electra.
Oh, wow.
And as if that were not enough, that Fred Plotkin teaching the audience the opera and the play Electra and how they're different. And, you know, what should have been 90 minutes was about 4 hours of Electra.
Wow.
With Plotkin, with the wonderful Colleen Dewhurst, and the fantastic.
Those were the days, Fred. Those were the days. I would have loved to have been there.
Zawa conducted. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the thing is, yes, Colleen Dewhurst that day was as impressive to me without the orchestra as was Ava Martone, fabulous Ava Martone, with the orchestra.
Sure.
It's all of the thing because of what Colleen Dewhurst could do with her voice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I hope when you teach, that you'll teach people how to speak too.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's very important.
I almost always make my students say the text with legato and line and intention before we sing it. So you do the first verse just speaking with your support, and then legato, most importantly, and then we go back and we sing it. And we do that. I do that every lesson. I think it's so important. If you can't speak it freely and with emotion, you certainly cannot sing the pitches and the rhythms. It's too complex. It's one bridge too far.
But also how to make their voices, I would say beautiful, but compelling and engaging as speakers.
For sure.
I was talking with someone in April about opera singers in general, and we said to each other that we felt that opera singers, we love their singing voices and so on. But not all of them necessarily have a compelling speaking voice. Because I was telling him that an opera singer who, in addition to being a great singer, I think has a wonderful speaking voice is the mezzo-soprano Denise Graves. It's very particular. It's a gorgeous speaking voice. And I would love to have her narrate things and just speak language for the beauty of hearing her voice, like John Gielgud, the same kind of thing. But because she's such a good singer that she can encapsulate the feelings and emotions of the words, the sound of the words and the meaning of the words. When I teach, I always talk about there's the sound of the word and the meaning of the word, and you have to bring both to your presentation.
Right. Those are the two ingredients of poetry, right? The sound and the meaning. It's beautiful. Yeah.
So I don't know if you know yet, but how do you pick your 18 students? How does that happen?
Some of them pick me, and then the rest are given to me by the head of the voice area, Dr. Bryan Hymel, who I've become very good friends with, and he's a wonderful colleague, and certainly will be a mentor to me as I continue down the road in academia. But yeah, I've already done, maybe 10 trial lessons with people via Zoom. It's not the same as being in the room, but it's what we can do at this point. But it ranges from undergrads, master's students, and even one doctoral student. So I'm really looking forward to working with singers of a range of experience and vocal maturity.
So I have good news for you and bad news. Which do you want first?
Give me the bad news.
Bad news is the cuisine in Bloomington ain't New Orleans. Nowhere near. You're going to have shipments come up from Louisiana with your coffee and your etouffee and the spices and all of that stuff.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, well, I'll be driving my car from New Orleans up to Bloomington, so I can pack it pretty full of andouille sausage and coffee and chicory and beignet mix and stuff like that. But yeah, no, but I'm really looking forward to, I mean, it is, we don't think of it maybe necessarily as such a beautiful place, but it's near Kentucky, and so that we're talking hill country. So it does have some rolling hills and streams, and the IU campus is actually, for being a big state school, it's very beautiful.
The good news is you're at the best public music school in America.
There you go. There's that too.
We're lucky to get to. And there's one of my favorite films. People ask, "What are your favorite movies?" One of my favorite was, I think, the year you were born, if I remember, called Breaking Away. You ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. Is that 79?
Yeah.
Yep, that's the year I was born.
So if you've never seen Breaking Away, you have to immediately get Breaking Away and watch it.
Yeah.
Everyone saw that film and they said, "Fred, we thought of you."
Oh,
because combination of Midwestern University
right.
and a young man there who is a
Mm,
student
right.
who loves everything Italian. And his
I love it.
parents are very perplexed because how do we get this boy growing
Right.
up in Bloomington, Indiana, who, his father said he only liked Ini food, linguine, fettuccine, zucchini.
Eeny food. I
And
love it.
this boy is so madly in love with everything Italian,
Right.
as I was then and still am.
Sure.
Um, but it's about how Indiana University and IU and what are called cutters. You know what cutters are?
I don't.
C-U-T-T-E-R-S?
No.
So there are these, I think, not onyx, I forget, quartz quarries,
Okay.
some kind of stone near Bloomington.
Okay.
And the people who did not enroll in university are known as cutters. In other words, they did manual labor of cutting the stone
Right.
that you see on the campus of IU, and not only. And
Okay.
from these quarries, they created these deep diving pools where the kids in the summer, but especially non-IU students, sometimes an IU student will go there.
Right.
They go and they dive, and this is their place of recreation.
I see.
But it's the most Indiana University movie you'll ever see.
Well,
So
I love
if
it.
you don't get it before, I'm sure they'll have it on campus in every shop because it's the most famous Indiana University movie.
Breaking Away. I love it. I will definitely check it out.
But it's also about Italian bicycling. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. And really one of the greats. Barbara Barry played the mother and was a little more tolerant of her son than the father was, which just couldn't understand.
Right.
How do we get this boy? He was a very sweet boy, played by Dennis Christopher, who would ride on bicycles and say, "Ciao, Papa."
I love it.
But it's a wonderful thing you're doing. I'm very happy for you. I'm very happy for IU, Indiana University.
Thank you.
I know you will continue singing.
Yeah,
you will
absolutely.
hear everything you've learned. And as I said to listeners and to you, IU is the best, and they only pick the best.
Oh, thank
and
you.
they have they have the pick of every opera singer in the world,
right?
Who at a certain point, even if they're still singing, want to teach.
Yeah.
And so good for you and good for them.
Thank you so much.
Bryan Hymel, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
And many thanks to you, Fred.